Hey Gen fam. So, I imagine a lot of you over the last couple of days have seen various news items from other YouTubers, much like myself, decrying the eventual death of E3, which is looking even more and more possible as time passes. This is a sadness, but it's also kind of an inevitability. And how are we going to fix it? Well, that's what I intend to discuss today. How are we going to fix things? Can they be fixed? Oh, let's break down the constituent parts of how we got to where we are and go from there. I think the first big thing to recognise is that 2019, Sony said we're not going to appear at E3, and from that point forward they haven't ever been at E3. Now there might be a wee booth with some of their stuff, but they've not been there to do a keynote. They've not really sort of partook in the entire E3 experience. Nintendo, even before that, some years prior, decided they were no longer going to do an E3 presentation, and they were going to rely more and more and more as time went on to the point we are now, where all Nintendo has is their Nintendo Directs. And it has to be said, those Directs have worked out really, really well. Sony has done its State of Plays, which have been a mixed bag, to be fair. As a Sony person, as a PlayStation fan, I will admit that the State of Play has been hit and miss. There have been some great State of Plays. There have been some truly awful State of Plays. We have lost PSX, but PSX only ever had 3 shows. But that really cemented itself in the minds of gamers, and I'm definitely going to come back to that. As far as Microsoft is concerned, they kind of do E3 but not at E3, kind of like EA. You know, EA was doing that thing where they were like doing stuff at the time of E3 but not at E3. And we've also got a point where Jeff Keighley and his Summer Games Festival kind of collides and meshes with E3 but also kind of doesn't. It's really super tricky. The thing of it is nobody really goes to Summer Games Festival. It all happens electronically. But then, for most of us, you know, who are not in games media at a professional level, you know, we're not members of IGN or GameSpot or Kotaku or any number of games media sites. I mean, even some of the bigger small-time luminaries, such as Kinda Funny, don't actually physically go to E3. You know, they might send a representative to the Game Awards, but that's about it. Because most everything these days is handled, you know, via the internet. Which is, you know, fairly a gamery thing to do, considering that gaming has only been strengthened mostly by the internet and the ability to share data back and forth with alarming speed and clarity. So I have to wonder, what is the future for E3? The thought that this year's E3 was going to be something special. There was an idea that like Microsoft was definitely going to be there because Phil Spencer had heavily intimated that Microsoft was going to be taking part of this year's E3. Although admittedly he had not said how they were taking part. And now it appears that they will be there but not there, like other years where they've kind of been doing it at the same time, but they're not having a stage presentation, they're not having the big booth. Long gone are the days of the famous pictures we used to see of like the Sony booth and the Nintendo booth side by side with a corridor down the middle one side green, one side blue, you know, or the picture, the classic meme of the young man and woman who obviously must be in a relationship by looks of things, or maybe just close friends, who knows. But one's got their arm around the other up the shoulder, the other's got their arm around the middle of the other. One's wearing a jacket of one side, one's wearing a jacket the other side, because love conquers, man. Yeah. Besides, it's just gaming. Why do people have to pick sides? But anyway. So, if Sony, Nintendo and Microsoft have all cried off E3 2023, which is a nice sentence, begs to ask the question, is E3 really going to survive? I mean, Bethesda will not do a solo show anymore because they're now part of E3. Will Ubisoft do a show? They're scratching for cash right now. I mean, Guillemot has sent out his letter going, "Oh, we're skint, work hard now." And of course the Ubisoft employees went, "Excuse me, we already work plenty hard, pal. How about you decrease your massive pay packet? You know, you're a CEO and you're taking all this money. What have you built? Nothing." And it's like, I mean, it's like Iwata, I mean, like, took a pay cut those years ago when the Wii U was doing so badly. You know, he took a pay cut. It's like, you know, I think it's fair to say there's a few CEOs out there, some major gaming firms that could learn a thing or two. Bobby Kotick, I'm looking your direction. Aye, you know what you did. We all know what you did. Anyway, so Ubisoft probably won't be there to do a show. EA, who knows? It's like they might do something, but it'll probably be electronic and it'll probably be beamed in from somewhere else, so it won't actually be part of E3, but it'll be during E3, so it'll be counted as E3. It's like a lot of the big voices are just not there. I mean, yes, E3 is great for all the mid-tier guys and the little-tier guys who are there on the show floor showing their games to the press, but we never really get to see that. The only way we get to see that is if a YouTuber at my level, or maybe a little bit bigger, goes along, takes a camera and films stuff. But when was the last time you saw one of those videos? Quite some time ago. And for a YouTuber to go, right? Say I was to go to E3 for you guys, which one day I would really love to do if it still exists, you know, would be I'd have to book a flight, I'd have to book a hotel, I'd have to get myself over to Los Angeles, and as far as I'm aware, I don't think there's direct flights from Edinburgh to Los Angeles. I think there'd have to be a connection flight, so we're talking some major money just for the flight. Then I've got to stay there, you know, obviously a day before, get set up, get acclimated, you know, find my way, you know, figure out the bit, do other stuff like figure out best routes and best transport procedures to get to the LA Convention Centre, you know. So I've got to pay for hotel space, I've got to pay for a flight, I've got to pay for the press pass, because apparently being a press ticket, never mind the press pass, but the press ticket itself is something like $1,000, if not more, probably a lot more now, because, you know, the last time I heard that ticket price was like about 4 or 5 years ago, so it's probably only gone up, like everything else goes up. Yeah. So I've got the cost of the flights, I've got the cost of the stay, I got the cost of feeding myself while I'm there. Yeah. And it's all just it would all be a massive hassle. I mean, it'd be wonderful to do, and I would love to, but the type of money it would take would just be, at this state, currently in my financial situation, absolutely, completely and utterly, totally prohibitive. So, consider that, you know, you're never going to see that kind of content because big media outlets are not interested in doing that kind of content. They're interested in doing developer interviews and exclusive reveals, you know, like, hey, we got this trailer. The trailer that came from the presentation not 30 minutes prior. So a lot of what we'll get now, is regurgitation. Now, admittedly, it's regurgitation with industry analysts who have been there for a long time and know how to write and know how to, look for the details, and they'll probably have guys in the back room who'll be doing like wind backs and watching in slow motion and speeding bits down and slowing bits and like zooming in on portions and doing really comprehensive breakdowns, which is all lovely and groovy. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'll be tuned. Always am. But will it be the E3 we know? But then again, what is the E3 we know? The E3 we know, most of us out here in normal land, I know I'm saying that as a YouTuber, most of you guys aren't YouTubers. I know a couple of you out there in the Zen fam are. It's like, big up my boy PSV Gaming, big up my boy, like RV, Retro Gaming Virus, and Generation Pixel. I know you're out there, brother. And a few other guys out there as well who are YouTubers like myself. But when it gets down to brass tacks, that kind of content just doesn't exist from channels like this. And the other kind of content that I could do doesn't exist because the big channels won't do it. So what you're used to getting to see from E3 is a heavily diluted, heavily edited, trade show, and that's what E3 has always been. E3 started as a trade show. It's only in the last couple of go-rounds where they've decided to start putting the public in. And when the first couple of years they put the public, the first few years even, they put the public in, it's just been an unholy mess. Queues up the wazoo, waiting times forever, press annoyed, public annoyed, industry frustrated. Now, the Geoff Keighley Summer Games Fest, of course, is a different animal. That's pretty much all digital. And there's less egos, there's less money put about, because the one thing that has to be said for E3, if you have a booth at E3, you is spending money. Even if you just a little tiny booth, like say maybe a few meters by a few meters, and you're just there to show game and have a few units so people could demo the game, you're still talking some serious financial outlay. So imagine what the outlay is for, like Sony and Microsoft having those gigantic mega booths with all the stuff, and someone's got to build those things, then someone's got to ship those things, and then those things have got to be constructed on site, and then deconstructed from site, and then shipped away. That's all money. Money. And all the companies, they're looking to save money. I mean, the recent events of the last couple of years, with the whole global shenanigans, has not been kind to companies' wallets. Now, yes, they're mega companies, they've got money, but it has had an effect. There's no arguing that. But with Geoff Keighley, all he really has to do is stand in a stage, in a studio with a fancy floor underneath him, and say, look at this cool thing, and here's this other person to come and tell you about this next cool thing. And a person walks on and tells you about the next cool thing. So I'm thinking that perhaps maybe E3, as we romantically conceive it, is technically dead. E3 taking on a model more like what is presented to you and I across the globe through the power of the internet is pretty much what E3 will continue to be till such point as it is surpassed or dumped by the rest of the industry for being too expensive and for not being enough of a vehicle, because it's only really a vehicle for those who are members of the ESA and the electronics there and stuff. It's like, so there's not really a reason for big companies to be part of it, and big companies can just do their own things. I mean, Ubisoft could put out its presentations, as can Sony, as can Microsoft. you don't even need the big presentations. You know, every once in a while you just put out a wee YouTube video and go, hey, look at all this cool stuff we got coming, yay! And then guys like me pour over it and report it to you guys who want a condensed version and want to get, you know, some thoughts behind it, have a human voice behind, you know, the corporate speech, which is what I try to provide. You know, I try to provide all my years of gaming experience forward to flesh out the information and make it more accessible and make it more palatable. Because sometimes it's just like, here's game, boom, and there's like no context. Guys like me, we obviously provide the context, and we provide, you know, thought and discussion points, and then you are able to come into the comments and offer your thoughts and discussion points. And that's one of the things that makes YouTube gaming on YouTube itself so important, because we're able to have this forum, we're able to have this digital town square, much like what Twitter used to be. Oh dear, Elon. Anyway, so what's the model to go forward? Gamescom? Gamescom is probably one of the most successful things there is in gaming as far as live shows are considered, because it's got cosplay competitions, it's got booths as far as the eye can see, it's got announcements, it's got pressers, it's got the games media there reporting upon it, it's got exclusive things that come out only from Gamescom. There's companies that hold back stuff just for Gamescom. In fact, it used to be the case that like Sony would hold back some stuff for E3 and some stuff for Gamescom. As with Microsoft, I'm not so sure about Nintendo because I don't follow their stuff as closely as I follow the other two, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. So we've got all these companies and they appear there and they do their thing and they have a modest sort of appearance at these things. But the biggest thing that makes Gamescom work is it's a split event. There's like days that are set aside for the public and there are days that are set aside for the press. So the public have their go and the press have their go. The two do not clash. And therefore, you know, the industry media can get in there, get their demos, get the reviews done, get all the information out, boom, put it online, lovely jubbly. Then the public can come in, you know, and go, hey, there's that stuff, I'm looking for this thing, oh, I want to check out this. Boom, 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 public has a great time, lots of money comes into the event from public sold tickets. Thus, there's this less need for all the mad advertising, because if you look at E3, riddled with adverts, I mean, absolutely filthy with ads. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some ads, obviously, at Gamescom, but that's only to supplement. You know, it's nowhere near as bad with the adverts. Now, also, one of the nice things about Gamescom, because it's in Germany, and I'm in Scotland, there's not so much of a time difference. You know, there's a bit, but no half as much as what it is from LA to Scotland. So, when I'm watching stuff on E3, I'm up, you know, often at stupid o'clock watching it. And then I'm annoying my family because then, like, if I need to get on and make a video about something I've seen at E3, you know, and I need to set up the green screen and put up the ring light and get the microphone, you know, and then think about what I want to say and make a thumbnail and film the video and then edit the video and all the rest of that craziness, then that's time taken out of their night or day while I'm doing this, especially because it's in the summertime, and, you know, they're wanting to do stuff, and I'm like, you know, using the lounge because the lounge is the studio is the lounge. I'm not a rich man, so so I think Gamescom is probably the way forward. In fact, I would go even further. I would say that there needs to be a series of smaller, localized events that appear in that region's own media. You know, you could put it international if you want to. I mean, it's on the internet. If you want to make something that happens in, say, Australia and put it out for all the world to see, go for it. It doesn't cost you any extra. You know, it doesn't cost you any extra to make it Australian exclusive or to make it global. You know, it's online. You can do what you like. So I say what you need to do is have lots more events of a smaller scale, okay, but bring them to people. So you could have a Scottish Gamescom-like event, like what we used to have when we had conventions like Resonate and Glasgow Gamescom and EGX. You know, EGX is still going, by the way. One of these days I'll get to EGX. I would really like to do that for you guys. And yeah, so you got EGX and all that stuff. I say mutate those, reformat them slightly, okay? Because EGX is probably the right kind of size, but change its focus a little bit. You know? It's quite expensive, but have more sort of things for the public to do as well. Right now, it's sort of like when people go to EGX, they play some demos, they get some merchandise, they bog off home. There'll obviously be a few talks, as is always the case at conventions. I mean, the conventions I've been to, you know, there's talks throughout the day. They'll have a hall set aside for that, and that's groovy. So I think there needs to be more of that kind of thing. So, you know, maybe have, you know, an event that tours. You know, have an event that's like, say it starts round about E3 sort of time. You know, like June, and basically have one that starts like put an event in like say Edinburgh or Glasgow. I mean, obviously I prefer Edinburgh because that's where I'm at. You know, I'll be selfish. Put it in Edinburgh. You know, like take over like the EICC or something, or you know, because that lower level, the EICC is fantastic. It's a great spot. I mean, Glasgow, the Edinburgh Comic Conventions that have happened there and stuff have been fantastic. You know, or even the Corn Exchange or something. I don't know, but anyway, have an event set up so there's a talking stage area, there's a merch area, there's like game demos, you know, there's like a retro zone, you know, and there's stuff that's yet to happen. Have a bit that's like, you know, really spice up, really try to do more interesting things with the space, you know, have real sort of public connectivity, and you know, then there'd be all kinds of YouTubers running around, like filming bits, doing stuff, doing vox pops, all that kind of crazy, lovely stuff. Then, like couple, you know, but let's say about 2-3 weeks later, it moves down, and it's in somewhere like say Liverpool or Manchester, somewhere like that. Or Birmingham even, you know, I mean, Birmingham's got the NECC, their NEC, it's apparently really good. I remember it being big enough for gladiators. Ooh, there's TV gold from back in the day. Some of you younger ones aren't going to remember gladiators. Ask some of your older pals. Ah, dear God. Gladiators. Contender number 1, ready! Oh God. Right, and then like about 2-3 weeks after that, then of course you stick one in London, because everything happens in London. And then maybe about a month after the London one, you'll have one that tours around each of the capital cities, and maybe one big city in like each of the bigger European places, you know, like France. You could have one, obviously that happens in Paris, and another big city. I don't really know, I'm not really a geography nut, so I'm not gonna like try and say all kinds of European cities, but one in the capital and a couple of other bigger cities in those countries. It's for like for Germany, Sweden, you know, all, just like moving through the EU, and sort of like boom, 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 boom. And then, you obviously, it would be nice to have, and at the same time, because, you could have ones that happen sort of like some of the Middle Eastern regions and stuff, if they're up for that. I know the Saudis would probably love it. I mean, they'd probably point up the door and give them a really mad building and stuff. They'd probably build something with lots of slave labour like they did with the World Cup. Ooh, controversial. But, yeah, obviously, got to have one in Australia. I mean, have one in, say, Canberra, and then in, Sydney, the two famous cities of Australia. I mean, the capital city and the big, everybody knows it city. Now, states, that's a bit different. Do you have one in each state? And by the time you've done 50 states, never mind the fact that you've got to get it all on planes and take it to Hawaii. How do you handle that one? But then Americans are much more used to traveling large distances. I mean, the internal airline services are more geared towards that. So I think probably perhaps for America, maybe have it just a couple of key cities. Say New York, Los Angeles, because, E3. So the LA Convention Center could do these events, but it's obviously not E3 anymore. Probably something like Dallas, maybe Miami. Let's see, somewhere else, somewhere more central. Not like Detroit. It's like that could help revitalise their economy a little bit. I mean, Detroit has kind of had a lot of trouble these last few years, but you bring in some convention money, people travelling from the surrounding area to that place to spend money there. That could be cool. So yeah, a series of more localised, gaming-centric, public-focused, press-friendly events. Couple of days for press, couple of days for the public. Either way round, whichever you like. I think that could very well be the future. That could be what fixes the whole E3 problem. Because it's so remote, it's so distant, and nobody really feels part of it. I mean, we all have, some of us gamers of a certain age have a romanticised idea of the E3, and of course I would love to go, but I recognise that if I ever got the chance to go, it would be such a hassle to go. But obviously, your thoughts on these particular issues are always super important and very, very welcome in the comment section down below, guys. I'd really like you to have a really good think about this stuff and come back to me and go, right then, here's the thing. Because I'm sure I'm missing stuff. I mean, I may be hip deep in gaming, I'm up to me eyeballs and gaming knowledge and stuff and experience and, but I can't know everything, and I'm sure you guys must think of something that I've not thought about. So, to round things out, E3 is probably just going to eventually fizzle out, probably in the next year or two, considering that the big companies don't want anything to do with it. We're not going to get PSX back, that's probably a given. We're probably not going to ever see the big companies do presentations at E3, which is part of why people tune into E3. And it's part of the reason why the press appears at E3. And if the press aren't at E3, then there won't be anybody there to report on the things that come out of it. And if there's nobody there to report on the things that come out of it, then it'd be as well just being a bunch of Zoom meetings between different games companies. So, in fact, in essence, E3 is technically going to die in the next, I say, 2 to 3 years. Which is a shame, but it is the way of things. I mean, it's been going a long time, and nothing lasts forever. Speaking of lasting forever, this video has been 40 minutes, so I'm gonna shut up. Hashtag support Scottish YouTubers, and of course, as always, aye, nae bother.